This is Empire Sports Alliance, Unfiltered. No fluff, no filters, just the real side of sports. We're talking athletes, coaches, agents, doctors, executives, the people behind the scenes who actually move the needle. From building careers to surviving the grind to winning off the field. This is where real conversations collide.
Welcome to another episode of Empire Sports Alliance Unfiltered. I'm Ronnie, I'm the wealth guy. I got my co-host Eric.
Hey guys.
And today we're joined by Andrew Skale, intellectual property attorney, top-notch, IP attorney. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's start there, Andrew, in terms of intellectual property. Obviously, this is a podcast around entertainers, people, athletes in sports, etc. We often hear people talk about their own brand. And I think we're going to be able to shed some light here today in today's episode in terms of what that means. So from that perspective, maybe how did you get started with, being an intellectual property attorney? What does intellectual property even mean? And what is your day to day?
Right. I'm going to start with the second question first. What is intellectual property? So the simplest way to think about it is it protects intangible assets, meaning basically inventions of the mind. And the core kind of elements of intellectual property, there's really 4 of them. And now there's kind of a 5th that has come along that we can talk about as well. The most common one that people think of is patents. Patents protect your ideas. So you come up with that new great idea, you can file a patent on it as long as it's never been done before in the history of mankind. Trademarks will protect your brand. So that could be almost anything that consumers associate with your goods and services so they know it's yours. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later more on the different types of trademarks, but it could be like a word, or it could be a symbol, or it could be lots of other things, and we'll get into that. Copyright will protect the expression. So expression means it's protecting something that has been put into a tangible medium of expression. And these things include like software or books or movies or songs or writings, something where it's something artistic. It doesn't protect the idea. So, if you write this great book about a wizard who goes to a school and fights bad guys, someone else can write a book about that same idea. What they can't copy are the character names, the storylines, the text, because copyright, again, only protects the expression and not the idea. Then there's trade secrets. Trade secrets will protect something that is incredibly valuable to you or your business that you don't want anyone else to learn about and that you're keeping yourself secret. The most famous is the formula to Coca-Cola. That's the most famous trade secret. But it's a fragile right. You don't have to file anything. You don't have to go to the government and announce anything. You just keep it secret. But once it's no longer secret, you lose your rights. So if one day Coca-Cola, one of the executives, opened up the vault and let everyone come see the formula inside there, poof, their trade secret rights are gone. The other limitation with trade secret is someone sees like your product on the shelf and decides to copy it. Trade secret doesn't protect you. It only protects someone from improperly seeing your secret and then misusing it. And then I said there's kind of a new one that's come along, and that's NIL, or name, image, likeness. Now, it's been around a long time that you can protect your right. So, for example, I can't just say that Michael Jordan endorses my product or services. That was protecting his right of publicity. And now you hear it a lot with college athletes. But it's basically the right every individual has to protect their own name, their own image, their own likeness, and only have it be used where they have approved of it, when it's being used in association with goods and services. So that's kind of a broad overview of what is IP. Do you want me to get now to your other questions?
Well, I think based on the discussion, the NIL piece, I think is going to be a separate, obviously, in terms of like having athletes and entertainers listening in. I think that's going to be a whole separate topic as a whole. But maybe you could make a couple more examples. I know you and I had, plenty of discussions around this in terms of what actually can be protected. You just mentioned from a trade secret, Coca-Cola. What about I always think, the example you made about Netflix, right? I think people are not aware of that.
Sure. All right. So turning now, these are trademarks, what we're talking about. There's lots of things that are trademarked that most people don't think of on the top of their mind. So Netflix, when you open that up, you'll hear a distinct sound. You want to make it for me? You want to do the music?
No. All right, we're good.
All right. Well, that's there you go. Ba-bum. Netflix has trademarked that sound. So NBC has protected their 3 chimes. And so sound can be a trademark. You can now file sound trademarks. What that means, it doesn't mean that no one could use it for any purpose. It just means that sound can't be used in conjunction with streaming services, what network serves.
Okay, so you could still, that tone that I hear when I open up Netflix, I could still utilize that for something else other than streaming.
As long as you're not confusing people to think that my new dry cleaner that plays this tone every time I enter is now a Netflix dry cleaner. So it can't be used in a confusingly similar way. But yes, and a great example, UPS has a trademark on a particular color. What do you think it is?
Brown.
Yep. So UPS has a trademark on the color brown. Now, that doesn't mean no one can use brown in all of America. It just means that FedEx, for example, couldn't use brown. So others in the business of transporting the goods of a third party can't use brown because that's where trademarks, that's UPS's trademark. And so in general, what happened is all the countries of the world got together and decided that every good and service that ever existed is going to be divided into one of 45 different classes. So when you file for your trademark, you have to decide which class you're protecting. You can protect multiple classes if you want, but the government will hit you up for additional fees for every class. But when you file, you say which class and which goods within those class. And your trademark's going to be limited to those particular goods or services.
How does it work with pictures? And so I say Getty Images. So I flew to Dubai back in, I don't know, 2010 or something for world championships. And when I was there, I took a picture of the Burj Khalifa and one off of the Burj Khalifa of the city. I put it on my website and Getty sued me for copyright. And we had to prove that the shadows were different, the angle was different, but they still came after me and it got dropped. It wasn't a big, but is that similar to what you're saying or totally different?
So what you're talking about is copyright. So it's different. That's surprising because if you own, everyone who is the artist owns their own copyright. And so when you decided to take your picture, you own the copyright in that picture. The only way you can infringe someone else's copyright is you had to have known about that other image and had access to that image and then created something that was substantially similar to that image. Did you see the original Getty image before you took the Burj Khalifa picture?
Yeah.
Then there is no claim of copyright. It's, and so you would win that, and copyright law does provide for fees. So they presume, now I will tell you this, the law, if it's super similar, the law will presume that you knew about it, that you somehow had access to it. There's a famous case involving George Harrison, and he did this song. I'm trying to remember. So the 2 songs were "My Sweet Love" was one of them by the Siobhans, and his song, which I can't remember off the top of my head, they sued saying, "We think you infringe." And George Harrison's like, "I've never heard this song of the Siobhans." And the judge said, "Look, these are so similar. You must have ran across it in the elevator or had it on the radio and you didn't recognize it." And so the court presumed that there was that access. And Harrison lost, and he was really angry. So angry, he wrote another song about his experience about being in court, which is kind of a funny parody of the judicial system. But so there is a way to presume that if it's super close. But in your case, you never saw it, and you could swear you never saw it. And, you could search your computer and prove you never saw it. And then there's no copyright infringement. You have to, that's why it's called copyright, because you had to have copied someone. If you just happened to come up with the same thing, no claim.
Yeah. Yeah, I got out of it. It wasn't a big deal, but it was like, really?
Yeah. The Getty is aggressive, though. They go after folks because they see so many people who just grab a picture off the internet. It's so easy. You search Google Images, copy the picture, paste it on your website. Right now, there are tons of crawlers going out looking for anyone who's infringing. So be very careful about just grabbing anything off the internet and using it on your product, your website, your services, your advertisement. Don't do that. Get royalty-free images, get a license, or take your own picture, because then you know that you have the rights to it. But don't just copy something, because you see those demand letters. I see them all the time, and it's frustrating. Because I've seen people who they had it like they put on a web page and they didn't even use the web page anymore. It was like some disassociated page that you can't even find. The crawler finds it, and they're like, "Well, it was still up on the internet," and they still have to deal with it, pay the shakedown fee.
Is there a fee to pay? So again, I'm just thinking for business owners, athletes, whatever, social media, you might just pick, again, you think it's not a big deal, right? You grab that picture off the internet, use it, and then, how do you get out of it?
You settle that. You pay them a fee. They'll say, "Pay us $2,000 and we won't sue you." And then if they sue you, it either goes forward, and you're likely to lose if they go forward, because
So you're better off
you
paying.
took it. You're better off just not doing it. Don't steal images.
So, what if I'm treating an athlete and the athlete gives me approval to use their name for Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and I take a picture with that athlete, but I want to show a picture of them in action? I'm not, even though the athlete okays it, I still can't go and grab that picture, can I?
Correct. The athlete doesn't have rights to that picture. It's whoever took the picture. It's a weird concept, but the copyright law protects the artist, and that's the person who takes the picture. I'll give you an even funnier kind of scenario, which I've never seen litigated, but this is how the law would work. You're at Disneyland and you're with your family and you're in front of the castle, and some stranger walks by and you say, "Oh, hey, take a picture for me." And you hand them your camera, and they take a picture and hand it back to you. So it's your camera, your family, and you own it. Yet the copyright holder is that stranger, because the photographer is the copyright holder. I've always thought that the law would try to work around that, but that's technically the law. Is the photographer, whoever's taking the picture owns it, the copyright.
So to that point then, Andrew, so Eric and I, we have a podcast. We're out there. We're meeting a baseball player. And we say, hey, you know what? Let's just say I take the picture of Eric and the player.
Yep.
So I now own the copyright. Now we can utilize it on this show, you're saying?
Yes, you can, but be careful, because there's still name, image, likeness rights. In Eric's scenario, he had permission from the athlete. You don't have permission. So you technically own the copyright, but if you use that picture in a way that it sounds like that athlete is endorsing your products or services, that athlete may have a name, image, likeness claim.
Okay. So how do you get started? Again, we're talking about it. We're going to go dive in a little bit more with athletes specific or entertainers, et cetera. But just as, a regular person, I guess, again, a lot of, athletes become, business owners, et cetera. So I think this is valuable information in terms of how do you get started? How do you protect yourself?
And to just add on to that, and I'll answer your question in a second, most athletes, they have a short career. It's just because the human body has its limitations. And so to capitalize on that career afterwards, you want to have your IP lined up. So I've counseled a number of athletes, especially about protecting their brand, because after they're done playing, now how do they make money? It's usually about reliving what they did. And you can do that with your brand name. You can do that with your NIL rights. But it's best to have that all thought about while you're playing, so you can prepare yourself for your post-athlete career, as opposed to the day you retire, like, okay, now what am I going to do? Oh, gosh, I guess I should have a brand, and maybe I should go and protect it now. You're way behind. We're talking to athletes at the early part of their career now, protecting their brand. Just lock it down.
Again, to your point, that could be very early, right? I mean, your career could be starting in high school, technically, right?
Yeah, of course.
But
if
they want to change it?
Yeah, they can. They can file a new brand for a new trademark. It's not your rights are going to be tied to when either you file for that protection with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, which I highly recommend. If you have a brand, the smartest move is locking that down. I'll give you
an example, Andrew. So,
Perfect. I was just about to. I pick on Burger King because they had a couple of foot faults, which I think are kind of funny, but really drive home the point. So the United States is unique in that your trademark rights are tied to your use. And I say it's unique because most countries, you don't have any rights until you get to that trademark office and file for your trademark. And I'll get to that story about that in a second. The United States gives you some rights based on use. So if you're using your trademark, you'll have rights, but they're tied into the geographical area in which you used it. And it's weird with the internet because there is very little geographical boundaries people think of now, but the law hasn't caught up. So trademark rights are still tied to that geography. So if you're using it and you haven't filed, you're going to have very narrow rights. As soon as you file, you get protection across the whole country. So you wanted that example. So when Burger King filed at the time, it was the 1990s, there was already a small restaurant in Mattoon, Illinois called Burger King. Now, Mattoon is this small town in the middle of Illinois. It's, I think, a few hours south of Chicago. But it was a restaurant called Burger King, having nothing to do with the big franchise and the Whopper and all that. Well, because they existed before Burger King filed, they maintained their rights in Mattoon. And what ultimately happened is now the country is divided. So Burger King, the Whopper company, owns the rights to the entire country except for a 20-mile circular radius from the town of Mattoon. They can't put a store in there. They can't advertise in there. They can't enter there. Conversely, the guy, because he didn't file, he's limited in geography, can only stay in that little town. He can't open up a place in Springfield or go up into Peoria or Chicago. But it's an embarrassment for Burger King because they don't have nationwide rights because this guy beat him to it. And then when I was talking, their footfall on foreign rights is if you know you're going to be in a foreign country, you want to file there early because if someone else files, you're not going to have rights in that country. And that happened to Burger King. So if you go into Australia, you'll see this place. It looks like Burger King. It has the Whopper, same menu, same layout, same colors. It's called Hungry Jack's because they can't use the term Burger King in Australia because someone else grabbed it. So make sure if you're thinking of going to foreign countries, you file there before you get there just to make sure you lock all that down. All right. You still want to know how I got involved in all this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems extremely important. So go ahead.
All right. So in order to practice patent law, they have a unique kind of quirk. You have to have a technical degree. So there is a special bar you have to pass called the patent bar. And in order to take that, you have to have some hard science. I have an electrical engineering undergraduate degree, so I was able to take the patent bar. And when I graduated, there was very few people who had a hard science degree and then went to law school. And so it was like a foregone conclusion, like, oh, great, you're an electrical engineer, you got to do patent law. And so when I started, I was doing patent law. And at the time, all IP was kind of jumbled into with patent law. We were the IP group and we just handled everything IP. Now you get a little more specialized. You get people who do patents, people who do trademarks, some who do copyrights. I do it all because when I did it back then, I had to do it all. The good news with trademarks and copyrights, you don't need that technical degree. And so if you're really interested in branding and marketing, that may be a good place for you to practice the area of trademark law. But if you want to do patent law, specifically if you want to help people get patents before the Patent and Trademark Office, you need to have that background in some special in hard sciences, biology, biotech, chemistry, engineering, something. As an engineer, I love the idea of helping people with their inventions, helping people come up with protecting their ideas, and then going after people who steal it. I've been involved in many lalawsuits.
So you do the litigation piece as well, right? So you're not just setting it up; you're going after it as well, huh?
Right? Yeah, I do it all, and it's always interesting, the litigation pieces. Because it's usually, or a lot of times, it's something that people can relate to. It's not like this guy slipped and fall at a Walmart, so he's got a lawsuit. So I've dealt with a lawsuit involving the rights to Winnie the Pooh. I've dealt with lawsuits involving toys, toy cars, for example. I've shut down knockoffs coming out of China. I have one right now, a case against OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT. I have an injunction against them using a particular brand for new hardware, which they're claiming to be coming out with. It's always something fascinating.
How much, if you're coming up with an idea for a product, isn't it, there's already something out there, but if you tweak it a certain percentage, then you're allowed to do it, right?
There's no fixed percentage. There's no magic number. I've seen a lot of fake news. It says like, oh, as long as it's 90% different or something, or 10%. I even forgot what numbers they're out there, but there is no such thing. So here's the test. Your invention, in order for you to obtain a patent on it, has to be new, so it's never been done before. It has to be useful, which is most things are, and then it has to be non-obvious. And so that is what distinguishes it. Is it an obvious change from what existed before? And there are some guidelines, but it's pretty gray. So there's a temptation to be a Monday morning quarterback and say everything's obvious. Oh, the iPhone, of course it's obvious. We'll make a computer that fits in our pocket and does all these amazing things. And so you have the trademark, the patent office has to be able to say that it was thought of and considered that it would be something that would be an obvious development. It usually has to be pretty close to be
What
obvious.
if it's a combination of a couple things that are so different individually, if it's totally different, but then you combine a car and a motorcycle and there isn't anything out there, does that work?
Well, and this is something I get asked a lot as well, so first of all, everything that exists in the world is a combination of things that already existed, because there's about 120 elements out there. So everything is a combination of those 120 different atoms that exist, or elements that are out there. So everything is always a combination of things that are already known. And so what you have to have come up with is just some new combination. You see this a lot actually with drugs, where a drug is being used for something that's never been done before. They can get a patent on that. And so as long as your combination hasn't existed, that's the key, is making sure it hasn't existed before.
All right, we're going to talk separate.
All right.
I have something.
What do you got up your sleeve, Eric? Are you planning on stuff? What's going on?
I am. I got the
can't have a
next
partner
$1 million
like
idea.
Love it. By the way, that's the magic number. Everyone's idea. It's always $1 million idea.
All right, I got the next $1 billion
Better.
idea.
Yeah. There you go. But I will tell you something funny. So my daughter, when she was in high school, wanted to file a patent. She's like, and I was like, great, let's do it. And so she kept coming to me with different ideas. And we would look and search and be like, oh, nope, that someone did that already. And she had like a little notebook and she kept it all. And finally, she came up with something. I was like, all right, I think this looks good. Filed her a patent application. And in about 2 years, she got her patent.
Nice.
So she now has, hanging in her dorm room at college, she has her framed patent showing that she's a patented inventor.
Let's go a little bit more into the, from an athlete perspective, especially NIL, which you touched on initially. And obviously, we have several folks on the show, right, Eric, in terms of like that, that are planning on doing things after their playing career, et cetera. But NIL specifically, again, because if you look at, football, right, this starts not in college, starts in high school, right? So
Right.
that becomes the topic. How does somebody prepare? What are some of the pitfalls that you see? What is there? What do you see from an NIL, which obviously is such a big topic?
Right. Yeah. It is very big, and it's a really important one. Think about it. It's the identity of that person. And so you want to make sure you protect it, like you should. So if you see people misusing your name, image, likeness, or using it in some commercial sense, you need to make sure they stop. Send a demand letter, send something to them. And if they don't stop, you need to pursue them.
Can you give us an example? I mean, obviously, I think with EA Sports in the past, with utilizing names, for players, logos for teams, is it just more like going after those people that misuse it, or is it to come to the table and have, maybe a solution in place, or at least get payment for it or get a revenue stream going? How does it work?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I represent a very famous ex-player who is now deceased. Yep. And we protect his name, image, the owner now, who is his widow, protects the name, image, likeness, making sure no one can use his name, his image or likeness, or anything that, that includes, by the way, more than just those. It includes voice, includes signature, pretty much anything that allows people to think of that person would be included in the name, image, likeness.
You say that, and I just saw a thing that Val Kilmer is coming out in a new movie, and he's all AI. So
Correct.
They had to get authorization from his wife or someone, I guess. But that changes a lot now also.
AI and NIL is really important to protect that. All right, let me tell you let me just back to what you said. So Val Kilmer has passed away. So that changes things because not all states recognize name, image, likeness rights for the deceased. Most states do. So we're in California, so they do. But in order to protect that, after someone dies, you have to file with the Secretary of State a form that says who owns that deceased person's name, image, likeness rights. And so if you don't, you may waive the rights. But let me switch over to AI, because this is a big thing, especially with voice. You're seeing a lot of celebrities who are telling the AI companies, like, if you use my voice, I'm going to go after you, and they should. It's Matthew McConaughey, you're familiar with him, right? He filed trademarks on a couple of his famous slogans, like "All right, all right, all right."
All right.
So he did he for the sole purpose, because he doesn't want people using AI version of him and take it, and this way he can not just rely on his NIL rights, but he can also sue for trademark infringement. And so we're seeing some of that for some of the celebrities to go and protect their voice in a way as a trademark. Because, you hear some of these, you said these slogans and you're like, oh, okay, that's Matthew McConaughey. And so he's filed a couple of them. And there was some press that came out when he filed it. But yeah, especially after someone dies, then it's an asset just like any other. And whoever the estate or whoever he willed it to would own that and has to make sure that they take a license from anyone who's going to use it, or sue someone if they don't get permission. But I'm pretty sure, I'd be real shocked the studio didn't lock that down and get an agreement to use his.
So you can inherit that in terms of that protection. It's not like, hey, you know what, if ever XYZ athlete or, celebrity or, actor dies, it just goes away and now you can you do with it what you want. There's still somebody still owns that.
Well, or can any Joe Schmo file that paper when someone dies?
No. When you file that, you have to affirm that you got the rights and how you got the rights. But it's limited. So California, it only goes 70 years. Some states have a lot less. Indiana has the longest at 100 years. But if you're talking about anyone who's died longer than that, you're free to do whatever you want with them. You could say Abe Lincoln endorses your product. He says it's the best in the world. You're free to do that. If you want, you could do anyone deceased past any of that period. It's good for you. Now, it's interesting with these periods because each state, you can kind of see what's driving the length of time. So like Tennessee, Elvis is, they're not going to let Elvis's NIL go into the public domain. So they'll extend it out. Or like California, they talked about Marilyn Monroe. And so it will get interesting as we get closer to some of these years in which a celebrity's been passed and what the states want to do. Yeah. Nice. All right. What else you want to know?
Well, I'm just wondering in terms of like, this seems to be a lot. Like, again, you're not just sitting back and waiting till somebody's going to, again, use your image or your likeness, whatever, and then, let's attack them. You're saying you have to prepare for this beforehand. So if I have a young athlete, whatever, playing whatever position and said, you know what, probably going to be done in a couple of years. I have this idea. Let's just say it's an app or another, online platform of some sort. You now want to go out and seek the help of a professional like yourself and be like, hey, how do we protect ourselves? And you start building that, right? Is that the way it works?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I said, I work with a few young athletes locking down their brands. That's generally where you start. You want to put your brand down together, but you can protect your name as a trademark. A lot of athletes have done that. Like Michael Jordan's name is a trademark. So
what about the Air Jordan, right? I would imagine there's a protection on it. Or is there?
There is, of course. Now that's Nike owns that, and Nike has an agreement from Michael Jordan to use his name for that. And Michael's done very well with that. But yes, locking these things down, very important.
I think that was a deal that was never done like that before. I think if you watched a movie on Netflix, actually, because obviously Converse were so big. If you talk to guys like, Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, I think they all say thank you in terms of the way Michael Jordan, had that, contract negotiated, right? So because they're getting royalties on this still, right?
Oh, not Michael? Oh, yeah, he's still getting royalties.
Yeah, I told him.
In fact, last I saw, he's made so much more from the Nike deal than he ever made playing basketball. Which is kind of funny at this point. But you'll see that.
What about football? Like, I think Tom Brady, TB12, I think is one of his brands. So
correct.
When did he file, right? He's an athlete. I'm playing. Obviously, he's a little bit different. He might, played a lot longer than most athletes, right? But when did he decide, to say, hey, you know what? I need to protect this brand.
You want me to tell you exactly when he filed? I can tell you why we're talking.
Certainly.
All right.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
out.
just saying at one point, you're playing sports, right? We have so many different people on in terms of like, obviously, if it's a scout, if it's a coach, or somebody that's an athlete, him or herself.
Right.
But there is a business aspect to this. Obviously, I'm on the wealth side of things. So, there is discussions to be had while you're playing, planning for the future, not just retirement planning from a perspective of putting money aside, etc. But also, again, when you're done playing, let's just say at 34, 35 years old, you got another 30 years in the workforce at least. And not everybody makes the multi-million-dollar contracts, right? So these
Right.
discussions, I think, are very important to have, surrounding yourself with a team of, subject matter experts to make sure that the next phase of your life is secured and you can utilize what you've built throughout your playing career. Would you agree?
So, all right. Remember I talked about trademarks being limited to particular goods and services. So he has TB12 for a whole bunch of different classes of goods and services. But protein supplements he filed in 2016. And, he played well until what, 2023 or something like that. So it was during his career, he filed this.
So a lot of guys, I mean, the idea is I'm going to be the next star, but in reality, you have no idea how good that person is. They could get injured and it's career ending. Do you recommend someone create a brand starting in high school now? Or college, or it's okay to wait, see if you get drafted and picked up and then do it?
Well, the good news with trademarks, it's not very expensive to file. So the sooner you file it, it is always better. The other good news with trademarks is you don't have to be using them to file. So mentioned multiple times today about being limited to goods and services. So when you come up with your brand, you have to decide what goods and services you're going to tie them to. Most often, the first thing athletes do is some type of apparel, clothing, something along those lines. I don't know if you remember many years ago, the Lakers won 3 in a row. I'm trying to remember what the coach's name. Coach Riley came up with the expression three-peat because they won 3 in a row. And so everyone talked about, he's getting a trademark on three-peat. So again, it has to be tied to goods and services. So he filed it on apparel. And this made it so that people couldn't use three-peat on apparel. But there was people saying, you can't say three-peats like some other sports team three-peats. No, the trademark law doesn't work that way. So you don't get just the ability to protect an expression and prevent anyone from using it. So getting back to the athlete and starting out. So when you file, you don't have to be using it. It takes about 1.5 years or so to get through the trademark office, assuming all goes well. After it's allowed, you still have 3 years after that, if you want to pay extension fees to actually show use. So you could be an athlete starting out, right in the beginning of the career, college, high school, whenever, and you're going to have potentially 4 or 5 years before you got to make any product, but you have it all locked down. And what I say for athletes is most of them will have a nickname. So the one, Ronnie, I worked a lot with Sean Merriman. His nickname out of high school was Lights Out, and he turned that into a brand in an industry. And so that's what we protected for him, was his use of Lights Out on various goods and services. And that was while he was still playing. We were getting that protected. So the sooner the better, especially because as these athletes are coming up through their career, you want to have that locked down. Because again, if you wait till after they retire, it's still going to, they file the day they retire. It's going to be 1.5 years or 2 before the registration is going to issue. And now as I said, you're behind the 8 ball. So locking that down early is just smart.
If you forget, I would assume that happens. So just go back to the Tom Brady example. Let's just say he forgot TB12. Could somebody just come in and, basically out of like, hey, I'm just going to, file this for like various different reasons, where it's kind of BS, the athlete still would have to fight it, but, it would become more difficult or, could it just randomly
Well, it depends. If the squatter has to have a good faith intent to use it. So you can't just file thinking I'm just going to steal it from someone. So as long as they could document that they had good faith intentions to use it, I might go back to my Burger King example. If someone didn't file, so let's say you come up, Eric, you have this great brand. You think I'm starting to use it a little bit while you're playing. Someone else goes and files. Your rights, whatever you have, are limited to whatever geographical scope you happen to have used that in relation to the goods and services. And the other person gets the whole country. So they can really hold you hostage. It can be a real pain.
It's like people buying all the IP addresses, the
The
web
domain names,
addresses,
yeah.
the domain
Now,
name, yeah.
so again, trademarks different. So domain names you could just buy. You don't have to have any intent. You could
No,
sit on it or
right.
whatever. Trademarks, you have to have that good faith intent to use it. So if you file an intent to use, you can't sell that actually. The law prevents that because they don't want squatters. In order to sell it, you would have to go and actually use it first. Then you could sell the trademark. So you can't market an intent to use applications to prevent this whole squatter situation. Hey, but if it's a brand name that someone feels strongly about and they think it's going to be worthwhile, they'll go ahead and use it. And now they'll get it and you have to deal with it, which could be a real pain.
Yeah.
All the more reason, lock it down early. It's not that expensive. It just don't have to worry about it then.
What do you see, maybe some examples, not just athletes, but especially now with artists, social media, creators, etc. You have some good, more recent examples on that front. Is it any different?
Sure.
What are they facing?
Well, let me tell you from a business owner standpoint, if you don't, if listening to this, you only take one thing away from this, this is what it should be. One of the biggest mistakes I see is with respect to copyrights. So remember we talked earlier about how copyrights are owned by the artist, the photographer, the creator. So what a lot of times businesses do, especially when they're starting out, they're cutting corners. I get it. It's not easy. It's expensive. You want to do what's your best and you got to do it fast. But let's say you want someone to design your website. So your neighbor kid, you're like, hey kid, I'll give you $200. Design me a great website. The kid does. Then the kid moves away. At that moment, even though it's your website, you're using it, the kid owns the copyright on that website. So let's say now you want to go sue someone because they stole your website. You need to go find that kid. And what do you think is going to happen when you go to that kid and say, hey, kid, I need you to help me with this. You got to either sign me the copyright or join my lawsuit. You know what the kid's going to say? Sure. Pay me. Right. They'll say like, yeah, give me a couple extra $1,000. I'm happy to do it. And I've seen this all too often. People will have they'll have a photographer come and take pictures for them for their advertisement. And then they want to use that for something else. And the photographer will be like, no, it's my copyright. So you want to get, anytime you're paying any money to anyone, and this is the advice, just get them to sign a written agreement. As long as the written agreement specifies that the copyright is assigned, then it's yours. So the one exception, which this is thankfully there, any work by an employee is automatically, the copyright's done, is owned by the employer. So if you have an employee and they're designing your website, don't worry about it. The company owns the copyrights for everything the employee's working on. It's whenever you hire someone as a contractor, that guy that said, write some copy for you, or to take pictures for your book, or as an athlete, to take some photo stills for you. That's when you need to have a written agreement and have them sign that. And then in the agreement, it's usually a standard kind of independent contractor agreement. Make sure the copyright is assigned. And if they're not willing to sign that, I'd say go find a different photographer, go to find a different web developer. It's not worth the hassle. You want to own your own copyrights.
So if I go to a game and I take a picture of my patient playing, am I now able to use that picture in my advertising if the athlete agrees to it?
Yes. So as long as you get the name, image, likeness rights, you'll have copyrights in that photo. Now you got to be a little careful because the picture may have some brands from a stadium or may have some like third-party brands in the background. Got to be careful about doing that because they may claim that you're using their brand to kind of promote your services as well. But assuming none of that, assuming it's just a picture of the athlete on the playing field and you have the athlete's permission, great, go for it. Use it with your services. Tell everyone, hey, look, this is my guy. I work with him. Yeah. It's incredible how much IP you just run into in your daily life that you don't think about.
All right. So I went to the Olympics. I was in Japan for 2020.
Nice.
With one of my athletes, and we took pictures. I swam in the Olympic pool. He took pictures of me swimming in the pool with the Olympic symbol in the back. It's on my website, but am I wrong for using that?
All right. So the Olympics are in a category of its own. There is a special statute that protects the Olympic trademarks. No other. Well, I think the Red Cross also is the one other. But putting that aside, so the Olympics is very aggressive in protecting its trademark. If the Olympics, I don't know if you want this on this podcast, but if the Olympics,
Man, I need a new partner, Andrew. I think Eric, it was really nice knowing you. You know,
Wait,
I think
why is the FBI here?
why don't you just go work on your website?
yeah, they, I mean, they're super aggressive about, like, you can't use the word Olympics for, like, you can't call if you're doing a, some product, some service, an event, let's say you want to call it the Ronnie Olympics or the Podcast Olympics, you can't. They have exclusive protection to Olympics. So you got to be real careful with anything Olympics or anything with the Olympic rings. So my advice is remove that part from your website. What were you going to say, Ronnie?
No, I was just wondering if there's, again, social media, the creators, again, we're talking podcasts, people that, generating or creating content. I mean, I think for those folks, artists especially, that there's, there must be, there's a ton of different, exceptions and things to consider. I don't know how a normal human being would think of all the necessary steps to take.
It's hard. It's what keeps me in business and other IP lawyers. The IP laws they're not easy to navigate if you don't know what you're doing.
I don't want to end up like you guys. Both of you don't have no hair. One is, trying all kinds of stuff in his website. The other one works with nothing else but guys like the guy in the middle. So not sure, but no, kind of as we're kind of coming towards the end, Andrew, is there certain things, again, athletes, artists, etc., like steps, and I know we mentioned several of them, that, 1, 2, 3, they really got to consider that, like maybe file early, whatever. What is it kind of like, last, great advice in terms of what they should do?
So locking down your brand from a trademark perspective, number one thing, get that on file. If you think your name's going to be used as a brand, you can even file on that. As I said, just like Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. Now that could be a few steps away, and just make sure you do a good job of policing when people are using your name, image, likeness without your permission. Because here's the problem. So let's say you have some athlete, and that athlete is like letting everyone use his picture for everything. When the athlete wants to go and enforce, it's really easy for that bad guy to go, well, wait a minute, you let these other 15 people get away with this. How is it so harmful to you that I'm doing it when all these others have done it and you didn't complain? And so it makes it really hard to claim any amount of damages. It weakens your ability to go and enforce that. So you really need to go out there and make sure you're shutting down any content that is not licensed by you or approved by you. Thinking about just in general now, it's coming about like the podcasters and the like. One of the things we really didn't get to talk to about today is fair use. That comes up quite often, especially with podcasters. So for example, the First Amendment protects this. If you are, just an individual and you're a podcaster and you want to do a review of a new Nike shoe, you could talk about the Nike shoe. You can have the Nike shoe on your podcast. You can say what you think about it. And the First Amendment is going to protect that because you, on your podcast, are able to do that. It gets now, when it becomes trickier, is if you, let's say, Ronnie, you have your own shoe and you're competing against Nike, and now you want to try to do the same thing, it puts you in a different situation because you're a competitor. And so now that's comparative advertising, a whole other body.
But cell phone companies do it all the time.
Comparative advertising? Yeah, but you got to be careful. You have to make sure it's 100% truthful. Because if it all is not truthful, you can end up in hot water. Here, I'll give you a quick example that I talked about once. So there was this company it was a bottled water company, and it was comparing itself to another bottled water company. And it wanted to say, like, well, look, our price was, I don't know, let's say it was $10 a case, and these guys are $12 a case. And so this is, buy from us, comparative advertising. The second bottled water company, they ended up going after the first one because they're like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, it's $12 in New York, but it's only $8 in Arkansas. And so it's untruthful to say that ours is $12 because it's not always $12. And then there was a claim saying that it violated their rights by misleading consumers as to their price when it wasn't always accurate. So that's just one of many different pitfalls that can happen when you're trying comparative advertising. Really meticulous. Otherwise, you can be opening yourself up to a claim.
Give us one last funny, craziest, kind of like, again, story as far as IP, goes?
Craziest? What do you want to hear about? You want patents? You want trademarks,
It's
copyright?
unfiltered, Andrew, whatever you want to share.
Craziest? I mean, the craziest, well, probably the most interesting case that I was involved with involved Winnie the Pooh and its rights. It's a fascinating story. I certainly can't cover it in 5 minutes, but I can give you some highlights.
Yeah.
So the rights to the Winnie the Pooh, they originated from a guy in Britain. His name's A. Milne. He wrote the books. And what's crazy is he wasn't even intending to write these big books. It was actually, he wrote the story as a gift to his wife, and it got published. And he ended up writing, they say 4 books, but really there's only 2 books that are stories about Winnie the Pooh. The other 2 are kind of series of poems. So really it's just those 2 books. And A. Milne was a playwright, and he actually didn't like being known for being a kid's author. And so that's why he only wrote those 2 books. Now, the stories were based on Christopher Robin, his son. So it was actually his son. His son had a bunch of stuffed animals, and that's where all the animals came from. He had a stuffed bear, Winnie the Pooh. He had a stuffed donkey called Eeyore, Kanga. These were it's just literally A. Milne was writing a story about his son and his son's stuffed animals. And when his son was younger, of course, he liked the attention. Oh, Winnie the Pooh. But then as he got older, he did not, and he resented his father. And they didn't speak the last 20 years of their life. Well, anyway, my client got involved in 1931. So these stories have now been published. Remember, it's the height of the Depression. There's no air travel. So my guy is Stephen Schlesinger. He's an agent in New York City. He's an author's agent. And he comes up with the idea, which it's amazing. He was one of the first to come up with the idea of taking characters out of books and putting them into products. And he envisioned this Winnie the Pooh could be something big. So he gets on a boat, goes across the river, across the ocean, and signs a deal with A. Milne to acquire the rights to the United States and Canada, and did. And then proceeded to put Pooh in everywhere, on clothing and bed sheets. And I've got some old records from Stephen Schlesinger's copy that has Stephen Schlesinger's copyright on it. He was the one that kind of popularized Pooh, and Disney came along in 1961. And it was Stephen Schlesinger's daughter that ended up in a fight with Disney that I got to work on later on. And there's more to the story, but for another time.
Is Disney a big offender in general?
Well, so Disney acquired the rights in 1961, I think it was, and then redid the agreement in the 70s. So Disney has the rights to Winnie the Pooh, but it's still an interesting story.
That's awesome. That's been very insightful, Andrew. I appreciate it. I'm sure, if you're an artist, if you're an athlete listening, and I think there's a lot of valuable information, though, that you shared. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. I thought you had to go, Eric.
I have patients running late, so it's all good.
Yeah, he had to listen to you, Andrew. It's obviously most important. So
I was meant.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. A pleasure being on here with you.